Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cindy Speaker. I'm happy to be able to talk with you today, hopefully share some things that'll be helpful to you. I'm sorry that we can't be in person together, but isn't it awesome that we have this world of Zoom and virtual connection? I'm actually kind of growing to really enjoy it. So today I want to talk with you about creating a TV show for your law firm. And I want to start off by deconstructing the myth. And here's why I say that. Because when somebody says, I want to create a TV show, I think so many times we look at that and we say, oh, boy, I think that one's a lofty goal. I don't think we'll get around to that one this year. And what I want to say to you is it's not a lofty goal. It is extremely doable. And creating a TV show for your law firm, it is within the reach of every firm on this call today. In the next 45 minutes, I'm going to share 5 things with you relative to that. First of all, I'm going to tell you where to start. I'm going to share my favorite resources. Number 3, I'm going to tell you how to build your team. Number 4, I'm going to tell you what equipment you'll need. And number 5, I'm going to tell you how and where to distribute it to maximize your audience. And when you implement the system that I'm going to teach you today, and you do it correctly, I guarantee you a show is going to bring you credibility and expert status in your market. It's going to avail you of opportunities for press. It's going to expand your network and reach. And yes, it will bring you more cases and better cases, because credibility and expert status, they matter. And you don't get that from your FAQs. And I'm not saying anything bad about FAQs. I absolutely encourage lawyers to do that. But we're going to talk about something different today. So I went to Wikipedia and I just kind of looked up TV show, and here's what it said. A television show, often simply TV show, is any content produced for broadcast via over-the-air, satellite, cable, or internet. And what we're going to talk about is a TV show that is distributed via internet, just like Amazon's original, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Now, I haven't actually seen The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. I've seen clips from it, but I know when it came out, it was extremely popular, but it never reached broadcast TV. It was distributed through the Amazon platform. And I want to tell you that before we're done today, I'm going to tell you how you can get your law firm TV show on Amazon, right next to The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. So let's get going here. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories just to start you off. And what I want to tell you initially, I want to help create a framework here, because creating a TV show falls within the arts. This is not about accounting or statistics or facts and figures. Creating a TV show is a creative venture, and I want you to think about how to get your heart engaged in it. And before you say, oh, that doesn't apply to lawyers, I'm going to talk a little later about Gerry Spence, or maybe I'll just go ahead and say it now. But Gerry Spence is someone I admire greatly, and I think you probably all do. But he is known for teaching trial lawyers to be storytellers. And that's the mindset that I'd like you to have when you consider what I'm going to teach you today. So I first want to tell you about a woman named Marilyn Bergman. Now, you probably don't know who she is, but she impacted me many years ago. And I'll tell you how that happened. I was in California. I was probably 19 years old. I went out there, hung out there for a month or so. And I noticed someplace that there was going to be a dinner honoring Barbra Streisand. Well, to me, Barbra Streisand is just the greatest artist. I think she's a huge talent, and I've always admired her. So I know a lot about Barbra Streisand, and one of the things I know is that Marilyn and Alan Bergman are her lyricists. They probably are her primary lyricists. They write a lot of her music. And so I went to this dinner. Anybody could go. There was nothing special about me, except at that time, I had to come up with $125, and that was significant. As a matter of fact, it was very significant when I was there as a teenager in California. But I went to this and found it fascinating. Well, when I left, I was still in awe because everybody just kind of exited And people were walking out, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. There's Marilyn Bergman right over there. So I went over and I talked with her. I knew who she was. And when I was talking with her, I said, oh, Miss Bergman, I admire your work so much. And I'm actually an aspiring songwriter. At that time, I was very involved in the creative arts, and I was doing some songwriting. And I said, do you have any advice for me? And, you know, here's what she said to me, and I'll never forget it. She said a few things, but what I remember is she said, make sure you have a message, because the last thing the world needs is another song that says nothing. And what I want to say to you is, when you embark on creating a TV show for your law firm, you have the opportunity to say something. You have the opportunity to tell stories that matter. And I don't want you to just think of it as a left-brain, logical type of endeavor. It's an arts endeavor. It needs to engage your heart. The second story I want to tell you is about a course that I took in Philadelphia. It's a small place where they have professionals that are working in video and various aspects of filmmaking, and it's called the Scribe Video Center. You may have heard of it. It's fairly well known. And what they do is they bring in working professionals to teach you various aspects of filmmaking. Well, at the time I was studying documentary filmmaking, I was doing, preparing to do a documentary, and I talked with the professor that day. This is not her. This is simply a picture of a documentary filmmaker. And so what I said to her is that I am so excited about wanting to create and produce a film, but honestly, there's so many ideas and so many ways to go. I just feel overwhelmed. And here's what she said to me, again, very, very foundational when I went on to later shoot a documentary in Kenya, actually. Here's what she said. She said, I want you to think about what you have available to you and work backwards. In other words, she said, construct your documentary around what you have in your world so it becomes doable, and not this huge goal that never gets accomplished. And once again, that was so valuable, because what she was saying is, first, if you have, I don't know what kind of documentary I had in mind at that time, but whether it was, you have access to this relationship or this specific location or something like that. Think about what is in your world, and then work backwards about how you can get your story created. And I thought that was such valuable information. So again, let me come back to Gerry Spence, because what we're talking about today is about storytelling. It's in the creative arts. Gerry Spence, masterful trial lawyer, is a storyteller. And that is the same frame of mind that I want you to be in when you launch a TV show for your law firm. So where do I start? Okay, so we're going to talk about where to start. And I want to give you a little background on that. So this is actually in a studio that I have. And let me tell you that we built this little studio, and we shot here for quite a few years. I now use outside studios, or I go on location. But in this studio, what you see right there is kind of simulates kind of a news set. That's David Daggett, attorney in North Carolina, and it's me. And behind me is a green screen, and we used what we called a news set. And it simulates a news environment, but it's really just a green screen in a room. Anybody could set that up, not that difficult to do, very doable. And it looks kind of like you're doing a news show. So what I would suggest to you is that you start with a talk show format. And again, think about what the documentary professor told me. Don't make this so big that it never happens. You've got to scale it down and think of in terms of, what can I do today or this week? And what you can do, what every one of you can do today or this week, is you can start a talk show. Not that difficult to do. Think about what your assets are. What is in your world that you can leverage? Who are the people, the skills, the network, the relationships, the achievements, and the locations you have access to? And ultimately, the most important thing is just start. Another brief story. I will tell you that a couple years ago, I was in a mastermind group with internet marketers. We were meeting out in Los Angeles. And once again, I had these lofty goals, oh, this, and whatever. And I kept trying to plan it all out because you know what? I love to plan. I love to work on my calendar and do my lists and things like that. I don't know if any of you are like that, but sometimes what happens is I get overly involved in my planning and I don't get around to taking the first step. Well, one of the people in my mastermind group, when we were working in small groups, said to me, Cindy, you've got to stop trying to see the end game. And you've got to start with action step number 1 because, and here's the nugget, because she said step 1, it's going to change step 2. And that made so much sense to me because I'm trying to plan through step 22. And what she was saying to me is step 1's going to change step 2. Stop trying to figure out step 22. Get step 1 going and just start. So now I'm going to show you a few, actually they're going to be images. I am not including video in this PowerPoint because when you embed video in a PowerPoint, it doesn't necessarily display all that great, but in a minute here, I'm going to tell you where you can see these actual videos. So this is a talk show set where the host is live. And on the left side, what you see is behind the scenes. This is in a studio. And what we were doing here is we had the lawyer, David Daggett again, and he always gives me permission to use him as an example. So I do that quite frequently. And then on the left side is Nancy Hollett, Dr. Hollett, and she was our host and she was interviewing David. And what we did is we had that 3-camera shoot set up and you can see behind the scenes. And then when we produced it, it looked like this. And basically, once again, that was a green screen background. And so that's what that one looked like where the host is live. Now, another option is where you edit the host in. I don't do this anymore. We did this in the early years, but I'll tell you where this does potentially fit. This is in an office in Pennsylvania, O'Connor Law. And in this, we went on location for this shoot. And you can see the lawyer sitting at his desk, and that's me in the back of my head. And what I did, I was a stand-in. And what I did is I fed him the questions. He responded, we filmed him. We did not film me. But after the fact, I had a local talent. She's actually a broadcaster for the 76ers here in Philadelphia. And I had her come into the studio and I had her basically simulate or actually do my parts. And sometimes that meant that she would just kind of nod her head in affirmation for the split screen, like you see right here. That is, it's not as natural. It worked pretty good, but the only time I think that makes sense is this. If you want a high profile host, it could be costly. And this is one way to make that work. Because what we did is I actually put an ad on Craigslist looking for talent. And I'm in Westchester, Pennsylvania, where we have QVC Network. I got a lot of QVC people, and I ended up finding out that they basically make about $200 a day, which surprised me because it's not really all that much money. And they're on-camera people. But Dee, actually, she asked for a little more, but I told her I felt I could only pay $200 for an afternoon at that time. And she said, okay, let's do it because it'll be fun. And so she would come into the studio and I would have her do like 2 to 4 shows for a couple $100 and put her in as the host. It would only take maybe an hour of her time and it worked out great. So if you want a high profile host, this is kind of a way to cheat it. And then you just post-produce it after the fact. Now, this is where the attorneys are the experts. There is no host, but the attorneys carry the show. It's their shows. It's their show. And this is Jim Adler in Texas, the Texas Hammer. And with Jim, we do a 3-camera shoot in-house. He's got some terrific tech people there. And what they do is they set this shoot up. We do a 3-camera shoot, and then we post-produce it with our CNN-style graphics, and it becomes Texas Law TV or Hammer TV. So there's a couple different ways to go with this. This screen I'm showing you is kind of busy. I apologize for that, but what I wanted you to see that if you want to look at the shows that I just saw you and you want to see the actual videos, you can go to the All TV network, and right there you'll see there's Texas All TV, North Carolina All TV, and you'll be able to easily navigate to see those shows if you'd like to. All of our examples today are going to be in North Carolina, Texas, and Pennsylvania. So now what I want to do is I want to share some of my favorite resources. So I'm kind of one of those people that I like to understand how to do something myself. Once I understand it and can do it myself, I may hire people. I work with a lot of freelancers, and I may actually engage freelancers to do the work, but I like to understand things myself. That's just the way I like to work. So I want to tell you about my first favorite resource, and that's B&H Photo and Video. And probably many of you have heard of that. They're out in New York. Fantastic place to buy your equipment. It's fine if you want to buy it at Amazon. I get that. Sometimes I do, but I buy a lot from B&H almost out of loyalty, because here's what sets them apart. They're known in the industry, and they have departments, various departments. And if you call them and you talk with them about what you want to accomplish, they're going to recommend the equipment for you. Or if you have a couple of pieces of equipment you're considering and you're not sure which one to go with, they'll help you make that decision. Furthermore, if you have a tech issue or if you have a problem, they're a great resource to talk to. So B&H Photo and Video, great resource. When you're considering your equipment, I would talk to them, get their opinion. Secondly, this is a great tip, Envato. So you saw that what I always say is at Law TV Network, we do what we call CNN style graphics. All of our firms would love to be on CNN and ABC on a regular basis. And many of you do get onto those platforms, and it's wonderful. But it's not always that easy, and it doesn't happen maybe as frequently as we like. So when we do our TV shows, our talk shows primarily, we use those CNN style graphics. It's just kind of my pet term for them. Here's what I do. I don't have them originally created. I go to Envato, and I gave you a direct link where you can search out broadcast graphics packages, all right? The package that we bought for the graphics we use, mostly on the Law TV network, cost me about $150. That's it. And then I've got editors that can go into Adobe and they can just kind of tweak them and make them work for our particular brand. So that's a real tip. And I hope some of you will take me up on that, because you can really make your shows look really professional if you purchase some broadcast graphics. And look, if you're doing a different kind of show and not a talk show, there's graphics for all types of things. I just gave you a link to the broadcast news graphics. The next thing is Design Pickle. All right, so graphic design, you're going to need graphic design regularly for your thumbnails, for other types of things. Design Pickle is a great resource. They charge $399 a month, and what you do is you can get a graphic every day. Basically, you can get 2 graphics every day, and I pretty much do ask for 2 every day. And they'll revise them as many times as you want, and still do 1 or 2 new graphics every day in addition to your revisions. It's a very quality organization. I'm not sure where they're based, and I know that the designers I work with are not here in America, but it doesn't matter. They're fantastic. They're fantastic. Highly, highly recommend them. The next one is Upwork. So when you're looking for editors, whether it's for Adobe Premiere or motion graphics, After Effects, whatever, Upwork is a great place to look. Upwork used to be Elance. It's now called Upwork. It's a great resource, but here's an inside resource that I want to tell you about. So WEVA is the Wedding and Event Videographers Association. They've been around for 20 years. Years ago, when I was in college, I was a wedding and event videographer on the side. I did that for a number of years, shot a lot of weddings. And this was the database that I was in. This is where I networked. I went to all the national conferences. And this is where you're going to find your best wedding videographers in the country. And I'm telling you, there's some good ones out there. And if you go into this database, and I gave you a direct link where you can search out in your state wedding videographers, there'll be links to their pages. Look at their work, evaluate them. If you're looking for a videographer or somebody that can help you start your show, this is a terrific resource. There's many resources, but this is one worth considering because, first of all, wedding videographers, their work is on the weekends. They are happy to have weekday work, and they are usually going to be less expensive than if you go to a full-fledged studio. It's your choice. You have to decide what you want to do, but I think it's a great resource. So let's talk about how to produce your show. All right, so we're going to get into the types of content to produce, and I'm going to go a little beyond shows. I talked with you about talk show number 1, where the attorney is the guest, either live, as it was with Dr. Hollett, or when you edit the host in, as with Dee Lynham, the 76ers broadcaster. The second one, and this is the one that I think, honestly, has the most potential, and that is when your attorney is the host and you're interviewing a community influencer. And here's why. All right, if you as an attorney are interviewing local community influencers or people that basically are of interest, you're going to not only create that show, they're going to love to be on your show because nobody says no to that. Nobody says no to that when you have a show. And so they are going to then share it to their pages, which is going to put you in front of their audiences. So I highly recommend that you get involved as you create your show to once in a while interviewing a community influencer. The third is with the same as with Jim Adler and Bill Adler down in Texas, where the attorney is the expert and they're co-hosts. There's other types of video that I absolutely encourage you to do. The show is something we're talking about today, but there's other types of video that you should all be doing. And a lot of these short form videos can be done on a mobile phone. The picture that you see right there is David. We do a weekly COVID-19 update, and I have my motion graphics designer add motion graphics to it. And you can see that this was last week when North Carolina opened for business, and she did a little motion graphic there of the state and a sign that came down said open for business. And David just shot this on a mobile phone right outside his law firm. So you can do things like that behind the scenes. Commentary video. I think this is so important. You all have things out there that are being talked about in your communities. I would stay away from politics, but there's interesting things that you can commentate on, whether they're related to your particular practice or related to your community or related to safety. So commentary videos are great. Also, story-driven videos where you interview clients whose cases have settled but are willing to share their story. Very compelling. And finally, FAQ videos. I talked about, I have one more after FAQ videos. I didn't mean to poo-poo the idea of FAQ videos when I started out by saying they're not really where you get your credibility and expert status. That's not necessarily what they're good for, but what they are good for is they're very good to use for traffic, search engine optimization. They're very important, certainly include them. And then firm updates. You want to do firm updates. And as you see here with David, we're doing a weekly firm update right now with COVID-19. So let's talk a little bit about equipment. Now, I had given you the resource of B&H Photo and Video. And again, I highly recommend you consider them to get some information and some guidance on your equipment. But here's what, where I would start. So for a show, if you're going to be shooting a show, and you may want to work with a studio or a consultant, but you are certainly, you're able to do this in-house. It's not rocket science. And again, I say to you, just start. It's not rocket science. And what you're going to find as we get into building your team, most likely in every law firm, there are young people there that understand video inside and out because they're on Instagram shooting Instagram videos every day or other things. And so to get started, if you're going to do it in-house and you need to purchase equipment, you're going to want to start with probably DSLRs. Now, I come from the video world, so I always like, right here, I have a video camera in my office, and I prefer video cameras, but most people, when they're getting started, are going to prefer to use a DSLR, which is basically a camera for photography, which also doubles as being used for video. I will tell you this, that HD is going to give you more manageable files. The 4K is great. The resolution is obviously beautiful, and you're future-proofing your content. But I will tell you that 4K files are absolutely humongous, and it's a little difficult to deal with them. So what I do when I have 4K files, I go into Media Encoder, part of the Adobe suite, and I transfer everything from 4K down to MP4 to make it more manageable. If you're going to get into video and doing it in-house, you're absolutely going to want to have a subscription to Adobe. It'll give you access to the Creative Cloud and all of Adobe's fantastic programs. So then after you purchase your camera, oh, and I mentioned mobile phone because these short snippets like David's doing on his weekly updates, if you have an iPhone or a good phone, I mean, do that with a mobile phone, but make sure you use a lavalier mic and something to stabilize. You don't want something, I actually, there's plenty of things to stabilize your mobile phone. So look into that. And then you may want, depending on if you're outside or inside, you may want to look into lighting. So microphones. So you can get an inexpensive lavalier mic for your iPhone for 20 bucks. But if you're going to be using bigger cameras and you need better microphones, Sennheiser is going to be the best. And we use their, I believe it's called the Evolution series. They keep updating that. But Sennheisers are going to be your best mics. And then you'll have to decide. They usually come in XLR connectors. So you may need to adapt that depending on how you are going to make this all work. And again, honestly, there's probably kids in your life right now that could help you figure this out, or local film graduates. Rode mics are I think that's a Rode mic on the camera that you see in the picture, and they're good mics as well. Lighting. So if you go into Amazon and you click on Diva Light, you're going to see a whole array of various lights that you could use for a video project. I also have used the Cowboy Studio. It's under $100. It'll give you some light stands, some softbox lights. That'll work well too. You definitely need to have good tripods. I think Manfrotto is a good one. There's a lot of them out there. And then if you're shooting on a camera like you see in this picture, outside, and for whatever reason you're mobile and you can't really plant yourself on a tripod, get yourself a monopod, because you definitely want your image to be stabilized. And then finally, get a clapper board. And why I want to tell you that when we shoot with Jim Adler and Bill down in Texas, we shoot what's called ISO. And so what we're actually doing is we're ISO recording, and we're recording each of those 3 cameras. And so that's one way to do it. But another way is to have a mixer and mix it live in the field, but that's a lot more equipment. If you ISO it and record if you ISO record and record each camera, you have to have a sync point, because when the editor goes to match the footage so that he or she can cut from camera to camera, camera angle to camera angle, there has to be a sync point to get it all together, or it's a nightmare. And so a clapper board basically does this. It gives you that sync point, but it also gives you, it's the little board you see in a film where they say, take 1, interior, whatever it is. So it's just, you kind of write on there what the scene is, what the take is, and then do your clap. If you don't have a clapper board, just clap your hands and sync it, but it's better if you have a clapper board. So let's talk about building your team. So you'll see that this is actually myself and one of my videographers. Actually, his name is Chris, and Chris was a young man that came to me. He had graduated from film school, couldn't get a job, and he was working at Target. I mean, he couldn't get a film job. He had a job. He was working at Target, and I snagged him because I heard about his skill, and he came to work for me Well, this year, so Chris now works for NFL Films, and this year he was on the crew that shot the Super Bowl. He has really turned out to be a superstar, and I suspect that there are superstars in your life that are just looking for jobs. These young film students, it's very, very difficult to start out in the film industry. And there's a lot of kids that graduate with film because it's a popular field to get into, and they can't get degrees. And many of you, where you're located, have schools that have film programs. I would talk to those professors, get some recommendations, because local film graduates could take you very far. I had another young man, his name was Dan, and actually I saw his video on Facebook because he was a friend of my nephew's, and I said, "Does that kid want a job?" He was fantastic. He was a bagger at a grocery store. Dan just got picked to shoot a commercial or a training video, I'm not sure which it was, for the US Army. These kids were kids that were involved in film, and I stumbled across them. I didn't do anything to help them. They had the skill. I just gave them an opportunity to develop it. And there are guaranteed kids in your life that have these abilities. All they need is the opportunity to develop. And I encourage you to look for them, because it's not going to be that expensive to get these kids started. And, you know, when you're starting out, you don't need to spend a fortune. And then, of course, I did tell you about WEVA, the Wedding Event Videographers Association, which is, they're going to be more highly trained, but that's a good way to start your team as well. With editors, again, I'd look at local film graduates. I'd look at Upwork. If you can get, in addition to your regular editors, if you can get a motion graphics editor, it does add a lot. We have a writer that I've been using for years, and she's fantastic. But if you don't have a writer that you know, one way that I found recently, and I have not used them, but I've looked at some of the stuff for iWriter, and I thought, if my writer really gets backed up, that might be a platform that would be a little more scalable if you have a lot of writing needs. And then graphic design, as I had told you, I recommend Design Pickle. Obviously, you can go to a local studio, you can work with a consultant, but I really encourage you to consider building your own in-house team. And the reason is because there's so much video that you should be creating for your law firm, and it's going to be much more realistic for that to happen if you have some in-house ability. So let's talk about where to distribute your content. So your content, you're going to certainly want to get out on social media. YouTube is a search engine, so you certainly want to get it on YouTube. You also want to optimize the content. This is something, you know, let me go back. I didn't really cover that slide. You want to get it on YouTube. On social media, I would get Facebook, Twitter, IGTV, which is Instagram's TV part, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not overly relevant. It's not real relevant to some of what we do, but there are cases where it makes sense to put some of your content on LinkedIn, depending on what it is, especially your community-facing content, where you potentially interview local influencers. You absolutely want to get it on your website, and it's interesting to me to see sometimes where attorneys still don't have video on their website, or they create video, but they don't put it on their website. And then what I really want to focus on for a few minutes at the end is getting into those authority sites. When I started off and I told you about Mrs. Maisel, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, I told you that I'm going to teach you how to get into Amazon. And I think it's very important to get into these two particular authority sites, Amazon and Apple Podcasts, because it's doable and they are authority sites. And a lot of it is about credibility and expert status, along with obviously expanded reach. So optimize your content. YouTube, here's some things you need to be doing. You need to be doing thumbnails, custom thumbnails, captions in the form of a .srt. You need to be doing cards, end screens on your long form content. And if you have at least 1,000 subscribers, you can link to your actual website on an internal page. And I would also do playlists. So if we have time, or I'm going to open this up for questions a little later. If you want any information on captions and SRT, some of that has changed recently on YouTube when they've gone from YouTube Studio, they've gone from the Classic Studio to YouTube Studio. I think the Classic Studio is just so much easier to create your captions on, but you can still use YouTube Studio and go back and edit in the Classic Studio, and that's where I create my SRT files, which you then need also for Facebook. Social media, captions on everything, use thumbnails. And what I mean by that is the last thing you want is for your video to land on this part where you have your mouth wide open. So you want a professional looking thumbnail that you put on your video. And again, you can have Design Pickle do that. Sometimes I use Canva if I'm in a hurry, and Canva is a free program where you can go in and say, I need a slide that's 16 by 9, and then you can come in and create your own slides. I will tell you that when I do use Canva, which I don't use as much anymore since I started using Design Pickle, I also have a subscription to iStock, and that's going to allow you to have nice professional images. And I highly suggest that you do have a subscription to iStock. That will help you tremendously. So let's talk about your website. When you create these videos, it's important that you have them embedded on your practice area pages and hopefully in your video library. And again, it's interesting to me when I see firms that are not putting their videos on their websites. And I don't understand that. But Mike O'Connor here at O'Connor Lawns does a really good job with that. And you can see here, this is his motorcycle accident page. And so he used his motorcycle accident video with a nice thumbnail. And if you look, you'll see that he also has a video library. So I would add your content to relevant pages and then also include in a video library. There is a discussion, and I think that this is an important one, but probably one better had with your webmaster. You have to decide whether you're going to upload your video or if you're going to use YouTube embed code. I can tell you that the average firm uses YouTube embed code, much easier, but uploading the files to your website directly, I believe, has a lot more value for you in terms of search engine optimization, but it's probably more costly because then you need to have the storage space, and video files are fairly large. So you need to talk with your webmaster about that. I also mentioned thumbnails, very important to do, and then you must have your captions. If you are using YouTube embed codes, you will already have them captioned. If you're not using YouTube embed codes, then you're going to have to create your captions, which I export from YouTube. So let's talk about authority sites, because this is kind of fun. So once you have your show, you want to get it into an authority site. Prime Video Direct is the platform that Amazon uses in order to launch their creative content. Now, you do have to have a paid account in order to do that as a creator. And then what you do is you can actually go in and you can upload your content into their platform. So for instance, what you need is a mezzanine file. Now, I will tell you that I tried to do it myself the other day, and I wanted to do it quickly without, usually my editors do that, but I tried to do it myself. And I actually converted the MP4 file into an Apple ProRes file, which I thought would work. It did not work. So I'm not the one to tell you how to create your mezzanine file, but find an editor that will tell you how to do it, because one of my editors, we do have content up there. And I went back to my other editor, Chris, the NFL guy, say, Chris, help. How do I get this converted into a mezzanine file? You're then also going to need to include captions, and you're going to need to have key art, both 16 by 9 and 4 by 3. I would then also recommend that you get your content recreated as a podcast. You can do that through Adobe Audition, part of that creative suite that you subscribe to, and create an MP3. This is really important that you be in these authority sites. I know I can't tell you how many times I've had lawyers say to me, "Oh, nobody listens to podcasts, they're not important." That's kind of not the point. I mean, it is the point and it's not the point. It is the point because obviously you want somebody listening, but the bigger point is it gets you into that authority database. It gives you backlinks from Apple and from Amazon. It's very important to get there, and it's very doable. It's very doable. So I highly recommend you do that. And then let's talk a little bit about press, because what's going to happen is if you do this right, you're going to get press. And I want to talk with you about how to do that. So first of all, let's talk about PR Log. PR Log is a free press release distribution service. Typically, if you go into some of the bigger services, it's going to cost you $300 to $500 to put a press release out, especially if you're going to include a video clip. But PR Log, you can do that for free. And we've been using PR Log for many years, and I know a lot of the big PR people use PR Log. So it's a very valid source, and I would consider it, but you will have an ad on your press release, and it won't be your ad. So, I mean, obviously you can pay extra to not have the ad, but I would highly recommend that you consider PR Log when you have maybe certain guests that are going to be on, or an important show, or a community worthy show, something like that. You probably also have heard about HARO, Help a Reporter Out. This is a great place for resources to connect with people. And then I would highly encourage you to search out podcasts in your target market, and seek opportunities to be a guest and talk about your show. Email them a pitch, promote your own show, because you know what? People that have podcasts, they're looking for guests. And then a database that I've used over the years is called Contact Any Celebrity. It's, I'm trying to think, it might be $199 a year, but it gives you a contact database of virtually every public figure in the world. And it gives you access to their agents, the email addresses, the phone numbers, the mailing addresses. And don't think that that's too lofty of a goal, because absolutely, this is doable for you. If you set your sights, I can tell you that in Contact Any Celebrity, you can sort celebrities and public figures by causes they're interested in. All right, suppose you're doing a show on a particular cause. Why not reach out to a celebrity about it? Why not try and get a soundbite? I encourage you to do those things. And then let's talk about shares. So you certainly want your content to be story-driven. Remember, I talked about this is an art form. Engage with your heart. You want engaging images and video. You want this to be heart-driven. Yes, it's certainly, it's facts. I understand that in figures, but it's also story-driven. And you need to touch at the heart if you want engagement. Think about what Marilyn Bergman said. Make sure you say something worth saying. Find a way to be unique. Be enthusiastic. That's important. And finally, make mama proud. And I include that because we all have moms. And over the years, I imagine every one of us has wanted to make mama proud. There's a heart component to that. And that's what I suggest you tap into when you create a TV show for your law firm. That is actually the end of my presentation, and I am now ready to take any questions. If anybody has any questions.